The day everything changed. Before I continue, please subscribe so you don't have to search for my channel every time and it will just pop up in your feed. Back to story. You ever have one of those mornings that feel completely ordinary? Your alarm goes off, you groggily reach for your phone, sip coffee that's a little too bitter, and yet deep down you have this nagging feeling that something is about to break? That was me, on the morning it all fell apart. I was staring out the window of my tiny apartment, the city below buzzing like it always does, and I thought, another day, same grind, same me. But that day wasn't same, not even close. I remember the sound of my phone vibrating against the counter. I didn't recognize the number. I almost ignored it, but something told me I shouldn't. I picked it up. Hello? My voice was rough, just waking up. Emma? It's your father's lawyer? Said a voice I hadn't heard in years. My heart literally skipped a beat. My father had passed away when I was 22. I'd barely recovered. And now, a lawyer, calling out of the blue. Yes, what about him? My hands were trembling. There's a matter of inheritance, and Emma, it's urgent. You need to come to the office today. The line went dead before I could ask anything else. I sat down, coffee forgotten, staring at the counter as if it might give me answers. I knew my dad wasn't rich, not in the sense of mansions and private jets, but he had always been careful. His life insurance, small investments, a couple of properties, that was it. Nothing that should require urgent attention, but something about the tone. It chilled me. By the time I reached the lawyer's office, my stomach was a knotted mess. The building smelled faintly of polished wood and old leather chairs, a scent that somehow felt like both comfort and warning. Emma, Mr. Carlyle said, sliding a folder across the desk. I wish I had better news. I opened it. My father's estate, my childhood home, his small business, and then, written in sharp, bold letters on a single page that made me want to scream. Under the terms of your father's will, the estate shall be divided as follows: 50% to Emma, 50% to your brother, Austin. Austin, my older brother, the golden boy who had left home for the city, successful, charming, untouchable. The one who had mocked me growing up, saying I'd never be anything, that Dad's business and home would belong to him eventually. I almost laughed, a bitter, hollow laugh that echoed off the walls. Mr. Carlyle continued, There's one complication. Austin, he's contesting the will. I froze. What? Why? He claims that your father wasn't of sound mind when he made the will, and he's threatening legal action immediately. I left the office numb, the city outside feeling impossibly loud. Every honk, every shouting street vendor, every clatter of construction, it all blended into a background roar that matched the storm in my chest. I thought I'd known Austin, but apparently I didn't know anything. The next few days were a blur. Texts from Austin, sharp, cutting, trying to provoke, phone calls from lawyers, emails, legal jargon I couldn't wrap my head around. I felt like I was drowning in a world I never prepared for. And then, just when I thought it couldn't get worse, it did. I found a note slipped under my apartment door, just a single line written in block ink. Stop fighting me, or you'll regret it. I held it in my hands, feeling the weight of it, and realizing for the first time that this wasn't just about money. It was about control. It was about him wanting to win no matter what. And deep down, I knew I wasn't going to back down. Not this time. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the city lights flickering across the wall like distant stars. I made a decision. I would fight for what was rightfully mine, but more than that, I would uncover every secret Austin had buried under charm and smiles. Because this wasn't just about a house or money. It was about proving to myself, once and for all, that I was stronger than he'd ever imagined. And I had no idea, not even a hint,
of just how far this fight would take me.
The next morning, I woke up with a pit in my stomach, the kind that gnaws at you no matter how much coffee you drink or how many deep breaths you take. Austin's name haunted my thoughts, like a shadow I couldn't shake, and the note under my door replayed in my mind over and over. I kept telling myself to stay calm, to think rationally, but the truth was, rationality felt like a joke when your own brother was out to ruin you. I got dressed quickly, pulling on jeans and a sweatshirt, trying to feel invisible, because honestly, I had no idea who might be watching or what Austin was capable of. When I reached my car, my phone buzzed. Austin. I froze, staring at his name. I almost didn't pick up, almost let it go to voicemail, but some stubborn part of me answered. "What do you want?" My voice was sharper than I expected. "Emma, don't make this harder than it needs to be," he said, casual, smooth, as if he was talking about borrowing sugar, not threatening to destroy my life. "We can settle this. You know it's better if you just step aside." I laughed, bitterly, and it sounded like glass breaking. Step aside? After everything you've done? After every word you ever said about me being worthless? Silence on the other end. And then a soft chuckle. "Still so emotional. Some things you never change, huh?" I slammed the phone down, feeling both enraged and terrified. He was dangerous, I knew it, but I also knew something else. I wasn't scared enough to stop. Not anymore. I spent the next hours doing research, pulling up public records on the business, the properties, anything that might give me leverage. My dad had always been meticulous, which helped. Nothing in his records was shady, nothing that could be twisted easily. But Austin had resources, lawyers, connections. I didn't have that, not yet. What I did have was determination, and maybe that counted for something. That evening, I got a call from someone I hadn't expected. My father's old assistant, Claire. She sounded hesitant at first, like she wasn't sure whether to reach out, and when I finally coaxed the words out of her, she dropped a bomb. "Emma, there's more to the business than you know. Your father kept some things hidden. Investments, deals. He trusted you more than Austin thinks. You need to be careful. He'll use anything he can against you." My heart hammered in my chest. "Hidden? What do you mean?" Claire hesitated. "I can't say over the phone. Meet me tomorrow at the old cafe on 5th. No one else should know." I hung up, a whirlwind of thoughts and adrenaline coursing through me. The next day, I walked into that tiny cafe, the smell of roasted coffee beans and pastries oddly comforting. And there she was, Claire, sitting in the corner with a look of worry I'd never seen on her before. "Emma," she said, voice low, "your father, he was worried about Austin. He didn't trust him with the business or the house. That's why he left it to you the way he did. But Austin, he's smart. He'll try to find any loophole." "Loophole?" I echoed. My hands were shaking. He can't just take what's mine." Claire leaned in, her eyes intense. "He'll try, and he might find a way. But your father left instructions, secret instructions. You have to find them before he does." I left the cafe feeling like the floor had shifted beneath me. Secret instructions? My dad had always been careful, but I didn't think he'd been cunning enough to plan against Austin. Apparently, I was wrong. Over the next week, I started combing through old boxes in the attic of our childhood home, boxes I hadn't touched in years. Dust choked the air, and the memories hit me. My dad laughing, Austin teasing me, our parents' arguments late at night that I pretended not to hear. And then buried beneath faded photographs and old tax documents, I found a small, locked envelope with my name written in Dad's handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were letters, instructions, and a journal, my dad's journal. Every page was meticulous, every entry detailing not only the business and the house, but strategies for protecting them if anything ever happened.
My eyes widened. He had anticipated this. He had anticipated Austin. For the first time, I felt a surge of hope. I wasn't just fighting blind. I had a roadmap. But I also realized this wouldn't be simple. Austin was clever. He wouldn't just let me follow the instructions. He would interfere, manipulate, maybe even threaten anyone who tried to help me. That night, I started putting a plan together, mapping out how I could secure the estate, protect the business, and most importantly, protect myself. I was reading one of the letters when my phone buzzed again. Austin. My stomach sank, but I picked it up. "Emma?" "Dropping by later," he said casually. "Don't do anything stupid." I didn't respond. I didn't want him to know I had the journal. I spent the rest of the night going over the instructions, absorbing every detail, every warning, every contingency my father had written. And as I read, I felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. I wasn't just a passive player anymore. I was a strategist, a fighter, and the fight had begun. The next morning, I met with a lawyer Claire had recommended, someone who specialized in family law, inheritance disputes, and underhanded siblings like Austin. Mr. Davenport was professional, calm, and not at all intimidated by my story. After listening to the situation, he leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Emma, your father's instructions are solid, but Austin will do anything to manipulate the court. Threats, lies, charm, he'll try it all. You need evidence, witnesses, and most importantly, composure. If you lose your cool even once, he'll exploit it. I won't let him win." And then came the first real confrontation. Austin showed up at my apartment. He didn't knock, he didn't ring the bell. He just walked in, like he owned the place. My hands clenched into fists as he smiled, smooth, arrogant, the same way he always had. "Emma," he said, voice dripping with fake sweetness, "we need to talk. Can we be adults about this?" "Adults?" I repeated, laughing bitterly. "You're the one threatening me. You're the one contesting the will. You're the one who doesn't think I deserve anything." His smile didn't falter. "Business is business, Emma. Family is family. Sometimes the lines blur. Let's make this easy." "Easy?" I felt my voice rise. "There's nothing easy about you trying to take everything I have." He tilted his head, his eyes cold. "We'll see. Remember, I always win." And then, just as abruptly as he arrived, he left. But the tension lingered, thick in the air, a storm ready to break. I realized then that this wasn't just a legal battle. It was psychological, emotional. Every move would be a test of patience, intelligence, and resilience. Over the next days, I dug deeper into my father's journal, uncovering hidden accounts, letters of intent, even details of investments I didn't know existed. I contacted former business partners, interviewed employees, piecing together the truth of my father's empire. And all the while, Austin tried to intimidate, charm, and provoke me. He even went so far as to manipulate a few distant relatives to question my competence. But with every move he made, I was one step ahead. Quietly, strategically. One night, after a particularly tense day of legal maneuvering and emotional confrontations, I sat on my apartment balcony, staring at the city lights, trying to process everything. Fear was there, of course, the kind that makes your stomach twist and your hands shake. But so was something else, a spark of confidence, a flame of determination. I whispered to myself, almost like a mantra, "I will not be broken. I will not be silenced. I will fight, and I will win." And in that moment, I knew that the battle wasn't just for the house or the business. It was for my identity, my strength, my right to exist on my own terms, unshaken by anyone, even my own brother. That night, I realized something crucial. Austin may have underestimated me, but he had no idea who I truly was. And by the time this was over, nothing would ever be the same. I woke up that morning feeling the weight of the week pressing down on me, a mixture of exhaustion, anxiety, and adrenaline buzzing like electricity under my skin. Austin hadn't stopped. He was like a shadow, always looming, always trying to get ahead, always manipulating people around me. I couldn't let him see me falter, not even for a second. I poured coffee, the smell grounding me, the heat warming my hands, and stared at my laptop. Emails, legal notices, bank statements, messages from Claire, updates from Mr. Davenport. It was a whirlwind I barely kept up with, but I had to. I reminded myself every single day that my father's journal was my secret weapon, and I had to use it wisely. That morning, Claire texted me. "Meet me at the old warehouse district. Urgent. Bring the journal." My heart skipped a beat. The warehouse district had always felt eerie, abandoned buildings looming, metal gates squeaking, the smell of rust and oil thick in the air. I grabbed my jacket and headed out, bracing myself. Claire was already there when I arrived, pacing nervously. She looked older, tired, and worried, but when she saw me, relief softened her features. "Emma," she said, pulling me aside, "we've uncovered something. Disturbing." My stomach tightened. Disturbing how? She glanced around like she expected someone to be listening, then lowered her voice. "Austin isn't just contesting the will. He's manipulating some of the company's financial records. There are discrepancies, money disappearing, contracts being altered, accounts shifted. If this gets to court without proof, it'll look like you're incompetent. Or worse, that your father's estate was mismanaged under your watch." My head spun. My father had left everything meticulously, but Austin had been working behind the scenes. "So what do we do?" I asked, gripping the journal tightly. Claire looked me in the eye. "We follow the trail. Your father documented more than just the will. He recorded meetings, kept letters, even wrote down notes on transactions. If we match them to the records, we can prove Austin's manipulations. But Emma, you have to be careful. He'll stop at nothing." The next few days became a blur of digging through digital records, tracing emails, comparing bank statements, and interviewing employees. Each lead was a puzzle piece, some fitting neatly, some sharp and jagged. I discovered that Austin had secretly siphoned funds from minor investments, hoping they'd go unnoticed, thinking I would be too naive to catch it. I felt anger boil up inside me. This wasn't just greed. This was personal. He wanted to humiliate me, to prove a point. But as I pieced together the evidence, I also discovered something else. Small acts of kindness from my father that I hadn't noticed before. Notes to employees. Letters of encouragement. Hints about how he wanted me to take the company forward. It made me cry sometimes reading his handwriting, the love and trust he had placed in me. And it reminded me why I was doing this. Not just for the estate, but for his legacy, for everything he believed I could become. One evening, while I was cross-referencing emails, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Emma?" Austin's voice slithered through the line. "Still digging, I see. I warned you." "Leave me alone. I'm not scared of you." He chuckled. Cold, almost amused. "You should be. You have no idea what's coming. People you trust might not be who they seem." He hung up, leaving a heavy silence, a chilling promise. I felt my chest tighten, my palms sweaty. He was escalating, and I had to be sharper than ever. The next day, I followed a lead Claire had uncovered, an old partner of my father's who had quietly helped with a few side investments. Meeting him felt like stepping into another world. Small office, cluttered with papers, faint smell of tobacco and old books, a place that seemed frozen in time. He looked at me cautiously. "You're Emma, right? Your father spoke highly of you. Listen, about Austin, He's been trying to rewrite history, falsify documents, move money around, but your father anticipated this. He left copies of agreements, receipts, contracts, some hidden, some encrypted. If you know where to look, you can expose everything. I left that meeting feeling a surge of hope, but also a gnawing sense of danger. Austin had already started his moves. I could feel it. Over the next few weeks, I carefully extracted digital backups, cross-referencing them with the journal and old paper records. I discovered discrepancies that matched exactly with Austin's known transactions. But then I found something that made me freeze. A letter from my father, addressed not to me, but to Austin, dated just a week before he passed. I read it with shaking hands. Austin, I love you as my son, but greed and arrogance are dangerous. If you tried to manipulate the estate or the business, know that Emma will be protected. She is capable, stronger than you realize, and she will honor the legacy I left. Do not underestimate her. Dad. My chest tightened. My father had predicted this, even warned Austin. It made me fierce, untouchable, but also the weight of responsibility. The following day, Austin struck. I was at a cafe reviewing documents when I saw him at the corner table, casually observing, a smug smile on his lips. I felt my stomach knot. I considered leaving, but something inside me, fire, pride, refused to budge. I sat back, keeping calm, and began typing notes, pretending not to notice. Then he approached, sliding into the seat opposite me without invitation. Persistent? I admire that, in a way. I glared. Don't think for a second I'm impressed. Emma. He leaned in, voice soft, but dangerous. You're clever, I'll give you that, but clever doesn't win in court. Charm, connections, money, that wins. Don't make this personal. Too late, I whispered. I could see a flicker of surprise cross his face. It's always been personal. And for the record, I'm not backing down. He smiled, slowly, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. We'll see. Everyone has a breaking point. And with that, he stood, leaving a subtle tension in the air, a warning I couldn't ignore. That night, I pored over every detail, making sure nothing could be twisted against me. Every email, every note, every hidden document, it had to be airtight. Austin's moves were bold, but my father's foresight was stronger. Over the following weeks, I started building my own allies, employees who had been loyal to Dad, partners who believed in integrity, lawyers who respected evidence. Slowly, quietly, I was turning the tide, preparing to strike back, but I also realized something terrifying. Austin wasn't just playing dirty, he was personal. He wanted to break me emotionally, to isolate me, to make me doubt myself, and I couldn't let that happen. One night, I sat in my apartment, exhausted but determined, reading my father's journal, planning the next steps. Every detail mattered, every warning had to be followed. And then, an idea hit me. Austin had been careful, but he underestimated me. I had evidence, allies, and my father's foresight. I could not only defend what was mine, but expose him completely. I felt a strange thrill, a mix of fear and exhilaration. I whispered to myself, it's time he learned what happens when he underestimates me. And with that, I began preparing, methodically, strategically, ready to turn the tables in ways Austin would never see coming. The battle was no longer just survival, it was justice, legacy, and proving to everyone, and especially to myself, that I was stronger than anyone had ever believed.
The next morning, I woke up feeling both anxious and energized. The kind of tension that makes your chest tighten and your mind race at the same time. After days of research, cross-referencing documents, and piecing together my father's instructions, I was ready to take a bigger step. I knew Austin wouldn't make this easy, but I also knew he had underestimated me. That mistake would cost him. I started by reaching out to several key employees who had been loyal to Dad, people who had witnessed the manipulations, people who would testify if necessary. I met them one by one, discreetly, in coffee shops, offices, even back rooms of restaurants. Each time I felt a mixture of nervousness and determination, knowing that one wrong word, one hesitation, could tip Austin off. One of them, a woman named Lena, had been Dad's assistant for over a decade. She handed me a stack of papers, her hands trembling slightly. These are copies of contracts Austin altered, she said. I've been holding on to them, but I wasn't sure you'd be able to use them. I felt a surge of hope and gratitude. Thank you, I whispered. This changes everything. With these documents, I could prove Austin's deceit. But the question was how to use them without him realizing I had discovered the truth. I spent the next hours organizing evidence, creating timelines, matching the altered contracts to dates and transactions from the journal. Every piece fit together like a puzzle, a story of manipulation, greed, and betrayal that Austin had tried to hide. That evening, I received a call from Austin. My stomach sank, but I picked up. "Emma," he said, his voice deceptively casual, "I know you've been digging. You think you're clever, but this isn't going to end well for you. Step back now and maybe we can avoid complications." I swallowed, trying to steady my voice. "I'm not stepping back. Not now, not ever." There was a pause on the line, then a low, dangerous chuckle. Bold words, Emma. I like that, but bold words won't protect you when the walls close in. And then he hung up. My hands were shaking, but my resolve hardened. This wasn't just a battle of evidence, it was a battle of wits and endurance. I had to be smarter, faster, and more strategic than him. The following day, I arranged to meet Mr. Davenport at a quiet office downtown. I laid out every document, every timeline, every letter from Dad. His eyes narrowed as he examined the evidence. "Emma, this is impressive," he said finally. "You have more than enough to challenge Austin in court. If we proceed carefully, we can expose him completely. But you must be prepared. He will fight back, and he will try to manipulate every angle. Are you ready for that?" I nodded firmly. "I'm ready. I have to be." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. I filed motions, presented evidence, and prepared witness statements. Austin responded aggressively, filing counterclaims, sending threats, even trying to discredit my allies. But I stayed focused, knowing that every move I made was backed by my father's foresight and the truth. Then came a breakthrough. One of Austin's key associates, someone I had suspected might be loyal to him, contacted me secretly. He had evidence, emails, messages, even recordings showing that Austin had intentionally altered contracts and siphoned money. "He's been sloppy," he admitted. "He thinks no one will notice. But I'm tired of being complicit. I want out." I felt a surge of relief. Finally, a crack in Austin's armor. With this additional evidence, I could build a case so solid it would be impossible to deny. That evening, I met Claire and Mr. Davenport to review the new material. This changes everything," Mr. Davenport said. "With this, we can confront Austin directly and force him to back down or face complete exposure." I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. Confrontation was coming, and I had no idea how Austin would respond. But I also knew one thing. I wasn't afraid anymore. The next day, I arranged a meeting with Austin at the law office. He arrived, as always, looking calm, confident, untouchable. But I could see a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes as I laid out the evidence. "Emma," he said smoothly, "you really think this will stop me?" I looked him in the eye. "It's not about stopping you. It's about exposing the truth. You've underestimated me too long. That ends today."
For the next hour, we argued, debated, and exchanged threats. Every lie he tried to spin was countered by facts, documents, and witness statements. I could see the frustration building in him, the confidence slipping. Finally, he leaned back, his face pale, voice low. "Fine," he said through clenched teeth. "We'll see what the court says. But don't think this is over." I left that meeting feeling both exhausted and exhilarated. The battle wasn't finished, but I had turned the tide. Austin's smugness had cracked, and for the first time, I felt in control. Over the next few weeks, court proceedings began. I presented evidence, witnesses testified, and Austin tried everything: charm, manipulation, false accusations, but the truth was overwhelming. Every altered contract, every manipulated account, every deceitful act was laid bare. And as the days passed, I felt a growing sense of empowerment. I wasn't just defending my father's legacy, I was proving my own strength, intelligence, and resilience. Then came a shock. One evening, I received a call from Claire. "Emma, you need to see this," she said, urgency in her voice. She sent me a file, video footage showing Austin meeting with someone who had been trying to sabotage Dad's investments years ago, clearly planning to discredit him and take control of the business. My stomach twisted. This was beyond deceit. This was conspiracy. I showed the footage to Mr. Davenport, who nodded gravely. "Emma, this could end it for him, but it has to be handled delicately. One misstep, and he could try to turn it against you." I spent that night strategizing, reviewing every move, every word, every document. I had to be perfect. The next morning, I presented the footage in court, along with all the accumulated evidence. Austin's face drained of color as the judge reviewed the material. His attempts to argue, manipulate, and charm fell flat against the overwhelming truth. I sat in the courtroom, heart pounding, hands clammy, waiting for the final decision. And then it came. The judge ruled overwhelmingly in my favor, citing evidence of deliberate manipulation, altered contracts, and attempts to discredit me and the estate. Relief, triumph, and exhaustion washed over me. I had won. But more than that, I had proven something to myself. I was capable, strong, and unbreakable. That night, I walked through the city streets, the wind cool against my face, lights flickering, cars honking in the distance. I felt alive, empowered, and grateful. My father had believed in me, and that I had proven that belief justified. Austin was defeated, not by force, not by anger, but by truth, strategy, and unwavering determination. And as I looked up at the stars above the city, I whispered, "I did it. I honored you, Dad. I made it through." The battle had been long, hard, and exhausting, but I had emerged stronger than ever, and I knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning of a life where I would never be underestimated, never be silenced, and never back down.
Even after the court victory, I couldn't relax. Winning against Austin felt incredible, empowering, almost surreal. But the lingering tension, the gnawing unease, reminded me that the war wasn't over. Not really. I had reclaimed the estate and the business, but Austin's shadow still hung over every move I made. Every phone buzz made me flinch. Every unexpected knock on the door made my heart race. Claire had warned me before. "Emma, winning the battle doesn't mean the war is done. Austin's pride won't allow him to vanish quietly." And she was right. A week after the verdict, I discovered the first proof. One of Dad's old employees, Michael, contacted me secretly. "Emma, I need to tell you something. You think you've seen the worst of Austin, but he had allies you didn't even know about. Some people in the company, trusted people, he's been bribing, manipulating them for years. If you don't know who they are, they could turn on you, even now." My stomach dropped. The thought of hidden betrayals, people I trusted possibly working against me, made my chest tighten. But I had learned long ago that panic was dangerous. I had to be methodical, precise, strategic. I spent the next days investigating quietly, reviewing employee actions, transactions, messages, anything that could hint at betrayal.
Every small clue was a thread to pull, and every thread revealed a story of deception I hadn't anticipated. And then, the most shocking revelation hit. I found a hidden folder in the company's files, emails, contracts, even recorded conversations that pointed to collusion not just between Austin and his known associates, but someone close to me. My heart pounded as I realized the implications. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was personal. I traced the communications, piecing together the timeline. And the name that emerged? Claire, my father's trusted assistant, my confidant, someone I had relied on for guidance and support, had been feeding Austin information, subtly steering him in ways that almost compromised the estate. I felt like the ground beneath me had collapsed. I confronted her immediately. Claire, is this true? I demanded, holding the evidence in my shaking hands. Her face paled. She looked at me, eyes full of guilt, but also fear. Emma, I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I was helping protect you from mistakes, from dangers you didn't understand. Austin, he twisted things. I didn't realize the full extent of what he was doing. I swear I didn't want to betray you. I felt a mix of rage, betrayal, and heartbreak. How could someone I trusted so completely almost destroy everything I fought for? You almost destroyed everything, Claire, I said, my voice trembling. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. She nodded, tears glistening. I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. I'll help you fix this. And she did. Over the next week, we worked together, painstakingly uncovering every link between Austin and his covert allies. Every email, every phone call, every meeting was documented. I realized that betrayal often comes from those closest to you, and that sometimes forgiveness is strategic as well as personal. As the investigation continued, more secrets emerged. I discovered that Austin had been secretly diverting funds into offshore accounts, planning to claim he had been wronged by my father's estate planning. It was cunning, ruthless, and calculated, but also sloppy enough for us to trace. I gathered all the evidence and shared it with Mr. Davenport. This is beyond what I imagined, he said gravely. If we present this properly, Austin won't just lose, he'll be exposed, publicly, legally, and financially. But you need to be ready for the fallout. People will react, and not everyone will be on your side. I nodded, steeling myself. The next step required precision. I planned to confront Austin one last time, armed not just with legal evidence, but with irrefutable proof of his entire network of deceit. The day came. He called me, voice dripping with false confidence. Emma, I hear you're digging even deeper. Careful, you might find things you don't like. I already have. And you're out of options. When he arrived at the office, he looked the same, polished, smug, but I could see cracks in the armor, uncertainty behind the practiced smile. I laid out everything. The manipulated accounts, the offshore transfers, the hidden allies, and Claire's recovered evidence. His eyes widened slightly as the weight of the truth sank in. How did you, he stammered, clearly struggling to process the sheer scale of exposure. I worked hard. I followed the trail piece by piece. Every lie, every manipulation, every betrayal, it all ends today. He tried to charm, to threaten, to bluff, but it was futile. I had the evidence, the witnesses, and the strategy. For the first time, Austin looked defeated, powerless, stripped of control. That evening, we presented the compiled evidence in court. Austin's defense crumbled under scrutiny. His network of deceit, the manipulated accounts, and the offshore accounts were all exposed. The judge ruled not only in my favor, but Austin faced severe consequences for fraud and attempted manipulation. I felt a wave of relief, triumph, and validation. But more than that, I felt clarity. The betrayals, the lies, the manipulation, they had tested me, pushed me to my limits, but they had also revealed my strength, my intelligence, and my resilience. As I walked out of the courthouse, sunlight hitting my face, I realized something profound. Life will test you in ways you never anticipate. People you trust may betray you, and challenges may come from every direction. But if you stay true to yourself, remain vigilant, and never underestimate your own capabilities, you can overcome anything. Over the following weeks, I worked tirelessly to restore the company, repair relationships with loyal employees, and rebuild trust. Claire, though deeply remorseful, proved invaluable, helping to implement safeguards and accountability measures. Slowly, the company returned to stability, stronger than before. Austin was gone, stripped of his power, humiliated, and exposed, but I refused to gloat. The lesson was far greater than range. The lesson was about resilience, courage, and integrity. One evening, as I sat in my office overlooking the city skyline, I reflected on everything: the battles, the betrayals, the long nights, the adrenaline, the fear, and the triumph. I whispered to myself, I survived. I honored Dad, and I became the person he believed I could be. And in that moment, I felt a profound sense of peace and empowerment. Life had tested me in unimaginable ways, but I had emerged stronger, wiser, and unstoppable. The journey wasn't over, of course. Life rarely is. But I had faced the darkest challenges, confronted betrayal, uncovered secrets, and claimed victory. And I knew with absolute certainty that I would never again be underestimated, manipulated, or silenced.
The morning after Austin's final exposure, the city felt different. It wasn't louder, brighter, or more alive, but it felt like it belonged to me in a way it never had before. The court battle was over, the estate secured, the business stabilized. But I realized that victory wasn't just legal, it was emotional, personal, and transformative. I had survived the storm, outmaneuvered my brother, navigated betrayals, and proved to myself that I was stronger than I ever knew. I poured coffee into a mug and stood by the window, letting the warm liquid steady my hands, letting the sunlight warm my face. The skyline stretched before me like a promise of possibilities I hadn't dared to imagine before. Claire had been invaluable in the aftermath. She worked tirelessly, helping restore trust among employees and reinforcing systems that ensured Austin, or anyone like him, couldn't manipulate the company again. I forgave her, cautiously, realizing that holding on to anger wouldn't serve me. The lessons were more important than grudges. But the final revelation came unexpectedly, a week later. I received a letter, handwritten, in my father's familiar scrawl. My hands shook as I opened it. Emma, it began, if you are reading this, you have already faced challenges I could never have imagined for you. I know Austin tried to manipulate, deceive, and break you. But I also know you are stronger than even I realized. This letter contains the last instructions for you, not about the business or the estate, but about your life. Live boldly, trust yourself, and never allow anyone, family or otherwise, to underestimate your strength. Remember, the true legacy is not wealth, but courage, integrity, and resilience. I love you. Always. Dad. Tears welled in my eyes, a mixture of grief, pride, and closure. I had followed his guidance, honored his legacy, and now I could carry his wisdom forward, not as a shadow of fear or doubt, but as a foundation for the person I was becoming. Over the next weeks, I began restructuring the business according to his vision, incorporating modern strategies, innovative approaches, and most importantly, cultivating a culture of transparency and loyalty. I held meetings with employees, listened to their concerns, and made sure they felt valued, secure, and part of a collective mission. Slowly, the company transformed, reflecting not just my father's vision, but also my own values. And then came a moment of quiet reflection. One evening, I found myself walking through the childhood home, now fully mine, restored, alive with memories and possibilities.
The familiar smell of wood, faint traces of my father's cologne, the warmth of sunlight through the curtains. It all reminded me of who I was and who I had become. I walked through the rooms, touching the furniture, reading old notes my father had left, remembering the lessons he had imparted, not just about business, but about life, strength, and perseverance. I realized that everything I had gone through, the legal battles, the betrayal, the fear, had shaped me into a person I hadn't known I could be. I was capable, resilient, and unshakable. But the final test of my journey came in an unexpected way. Austin, humiliated and exposed, attempted one last desperate maneuver. He sent a lawyer to negotiate secretly, offering to relinquish all claims in exchange for a silent settlement, hoping to avoid further public humiliation. I read the proposal and felt a fleeting pang of anger, but then I realized something crucial. I didn't need his compliance or his recognition. I had won without compromise. I responded firmly through my lawyer: no settlements, no negotiations. Justice had been served, and I wouldn't allow him any foothold. That night, I walked through the city streets, the lights reflecting off wet asphalt from a recent rain. The air smelled fresh, clean, like a beginning. I felt the strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration, a satisfaction that went beyond triumph. It was closure, empowerment, and freedom all at once. In the weeks that followed, I began making plans for the future. The company was thriving, employees were loyal, and my father's vision was secure. I also reconnected with friends and family who had supported me quietly, building bonds that were strengthened by shared trials and victories. And somewhere in the midst of it all, I found myself reflecting on personal growth. I realized that strength isn't just about winning battles, confronting enemies, or securing wealth. It's about integrity, courage, and resilience in the face of fear and betrayal. I had learned to trust myself, to listen to my instincts, and to never underestimate my own capacity to rise above challenges. One afternoon, as I sat in my office reviewing the company's progress, a thought struck me with clarity. Life would always throw challenges, betrayals, and tests my way, but I was prepared now. I had the tools, the experience, and most importantly, the confidence to face whatever came next. I picked up the phone and called Claire. I said, "Thank you." Her voice quivered, touched. "You don't have to thank me, Emma. You did this. You made it happen." I smiled. "We did this. Together." The next few months brought a sense of calm that I hadn't felt in years. I traveled briefly to clear my mind, explored projects I had always dreamed of, and immersed myself in creative and professional endeavors that made me feel alive. I met people who inspired me, strengthened my connections, and nurtured my confidence. And then, in the quiet of one evening, I returned to the childhood home, sitting on the porch as the sun set. The sky blazed with hues of orange, pink, and purple, the world bathed in light that felt symbolic of the journey I had endured. I thought of my father, of Austin, of Claire, of the battles fought and won. I realized that life, with all its trials, had taught me more than any classroom, book, or mentor could ever. I whispered to myself, softly but firmly, "I am capable. I am strong. I am unstoppable." And I meant it. The final revelation wasn't about defeating Austin, exposing betrayal, or securing wealth. It was about discovering my own power, my own resilience, and my ability to face adversity with courage, intelligence, and grace. I had survived the storms, navigated deception, and emerged stronger, wiser, and fully in control of my destiny. And as the last light of day faded, I understood something profound. True victory isn't measured by wealth, power, or revenge. It's measured by the strength you discover within yourself when everything else seems lost. That night, I slept with a sense of peace and purpose I had never known before. The battles of the past, the betrayals, the fear, they had all been necessary. They had forged me into someone who would never be underestimated, never be silenced, and never allow anyone to diminish her worth again. My father's legacy was secure, the business was thriving, and my own path was clear. And in that clarity, I found a sense of freedom, fulfillment, and inspiration that would carry me forward. Forever. I had faced my past, conquered my challenges, and embraced my strength. And in that moment, I knew that whatever the future held, success, love, challenges, or surprises, I was ready, completely, unapologetically, and unstoppable.